Good morning, beautiful people of the internet, and welcome to another Sunday Super Supplement special. We are joined as ever by the brilliant Helen Chorley, the amazing Adam Lawrence, the super special Piotr Rusnek, and myself, Jay Howard. We are reeling from 2 days of Partners in Property Live. We'll probably be sharing a little bit about that. We've obviously got Adam's supplement that we'll be touching on, and of course we'll be hitting every tangent along the way, because why the fuck not? So we normally do start with Adam doing giving us the abbreviated 3,000 instead of 8,000 words kind of cliff notes, and then we take the discussion from there. So Adam, kick it off. How was it?
To be honest, Jay, I can't remember what I wrote because I wrote it yesterday morning, and it's been a long time since then.
I think what people want to really know for the start, how was PIP Live?
Yeah, that's what we actually
I think that we want the highlights from the real event, like that.
So
everyone can read the supplement later.
To say it was superbly curated by Mr. Howard and Mr. Ben Nichols would be an understatement. I think I said move over Ant and Dec. Realistically, it was pretty bloody spectacular from those two, to be honest with you. And just absolutely ram-packed full of. There was a lot of shell-shocked people after I closed up yesterday, and there was a lot of people who were just like,
Yeah.
And whenever you've got, we had the world's greatest sandwich. We had Kwesi in the afternoon to kick us off. Then we had Dorian, who gets not only bigger and better, but also funnier every time I hear him speak. He was absolutely spectacular. And then Dorian's one of those people who, when you find out how old he is, you're just like, oh, piss off.
Yeah.
You know, he's an absolute rock star. And then I tried to lift the mood whilst giving a dose of economic reality, and probably just noting the difference between recessions and inflationary times, and then what it actually means for us, whether it's necessarily doesn't. The point really is, it doesn't have to be a bad thing for your business. If it is a bad thing, you might need to think about changing your business model so it isn't a bad thing, realistically. But then in the morning we had Kirsty, who's always superb, although Kirsty's openly not a morning person. So she was hacked off having to open up on the Saturday, and she made her feelings perfectly clear to me on that front. And then Will curated a beautiful social impact panel where we had a wonderful smattering of creative explosions, and the level of detail and expertise to which was displayed was just phenomenal. So learned a load on that stuff. There was a lot of social in there yesterday, and there's a lot of scope in social, I think, over the next. If people want to be counter-cyclical or defensive, couldn't have come at a better time, really. And then, of course, we had a superb nice dinner, after dinner speaker, Paul Newton, magician, picked on the toughest people in the audience to do some tricks on, really. Kwesi, not a man you would want to try and hoodwink, a man who probably what do you call it, subterfuge, or he threw more shade to a magician than anyone I've ever seen, and still got read for what cards he had and this and that and the other.
The highlight for me was Paul was like, okay, pick whichever card, keep shuffling the deck, turn your back, do whatever you want, look at the card and then put it between your hands and then turn around and then face me. So Kwesi's like, yeah, I've done all that. He goes, okay, so now think of the card. He goes, and Kwesi was like, I don't know what the card is. He goes, how can I read your mind if you don't look at the card? And Kwesi was like, you're never going to get it. Like, Kwesi must have been thinking of all the different cards. You're never going to get it. And then, like, it took him like 3 seconds. He got the card, and then Kwesi got the card, slammed it on the floor, and walked off in a proper huff. It was literally, you couldn't have written anything more entertaining or engaging. And Paul was like, this, I've never had this happen before. And it was absolutely brilliant.
Then we had a bit of a dance, and then with the one bar closed, so we moved to the residence bar, and We've got live runners by the side of Jay's car. We've got interference. Is that Dominic?
live guest.
And
that's it. There's no escaping some people.
the residence bar there's a bit trappy, isn't it? Because it's quite a thin, long room, and it's quite hard to actually leave because you start on the one side of the room saying, "I'm going to go now. Bye, everyone. Lovely handshakes, hugs, whatever," and then you go past about 30 people, and then people at the bar. What do you want? Maybe just one more drink? Oh, yeah. I think I left 3 times last night, and it was.
I think I told you I was leaving about twice. I got like 2 hugs. Like, oh yeah, that was a great day, and I got recycled back round to say goodbye, and I was like, how have I got back to the start?
I think you might need to work on your ESG policy, mate. To be honest,
yes.
Very
My
sustainable.
strategy was lacking something rotten.
Highly sustainable, but not not sustainable in the long run.
Oh.
Yeah, and on Friday we had, it was super. We opened up with Neil Martin, always absolutely amazing. Couldn't pick anyone better to open things up.
Yeah,
really
good.
lifted the room, crushed it like he always does. Superb presenter. Maria Thompson, who come all the way down from the Highlands to talk to us, which was superb. Sort of shared lots of stuff with us about what she was doing. Rod, who obviously just made everyone really depressed with his talk. He was fantastic, as he always is. He was on absolutely top form, laser focused as usual. Delivering the truth bombs, and we had a fab afternoon as well, didn't we? We had a really good couple of days. So superbly curated and put together. There was a guy,
I think.
I've not heard of him before. Crapson or something. I don't know if you guys know him. I'm not having him again, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
His chat is woeful, absolutely woeful.
I heard someone mentioning that he has far too many pillars in his talk, and that he needs to kind of streamline the 8 down to 3 or 4.
It was a bit of a pillar off, wasn't it? Really,
yeah.
I think people confuse pillar talk with pillow talk. It's a Cockney accent thing, I think, or something. It's like, let's hear your pillar talk, mate. It was there were some inferior pillars, and then there were some strategic pillars that have lasted the test of time. You could decide who delivered what sort of level of content if you wanted to. And then Sue did a lovely presentation. It was a reprisal of Dorian. Actually reminded me of one of the first presentations I ever saw Sue do yesterday, because I was at a meet years ago, and Sue was presenting, and she stood up and she talked through some of the things that she'd done and all these mistakes that she'd made. And they weren't terrible mistakes. Some of them had taken time to recover from. She'd held on to these properties, not a big deal. Hadn't probably optimized what she could have done, but no pound notes were harmed in the making of the making of the video. And after the presentation, I remember saying to her, Sue, it is okay to say some things that have gone well. I know you don't want to do the whole guru, make £1 million out of 50p and a pack of crisps or whatever. But you are allowed to say some stuff that's gone well. That is okay, And that was what Dorian was like yesterday. Just like, well, this went wrong, and this went wrong, and this. Well, we made money, but we should have made more money, and all this sort of stuff. I was like, you're so painstakingly honest, So she did a super whistle stop tour of everything that she's done, and then there was another bloke on. He was, I think he was like an alternate or something, and he broke the records for how many swear words you could say in one sentence. I'd never heard anything like it before. I'd actually planned one swear word for my talk, and then I saw Jay present and thought, oh, fuck it.
I think there was one sentence where there was just one word that wasn't a curse or a profanity.
A man with your grasp of the English language who can either go big or go home with Jay Howard, isn't it? It's as simple as that. And It was fab. I did say we put him on as close to the watershed as we could, but I don't think half 4 really counts, to be honest with you. But it set us up beautifully for Friday night as well. So where a good 20 odd people got to see one of the finest low grade venues that Solihull has to offer. And I'm sure that's 20 people who won't be revisiting that venue at any point in the near future, I'd imagine. But I wasn't there, so I was getting my beauty sleep for yesterday's presentation. So what goes on tour stays on tour, Jay, I believe is the
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, I kind of, it got to a point that night where I was on the double gin and tonics, and I was really behaving myself, and the music was like 80s and 90s kind of lovers rock and pub classics, and I was like, this is amazing. And it looks like you're surrounded by 12-year-olds. Everyone looks really young, right? And I was kind of like, there was a real juxtaposition between the vibe and the other people there, and you're kind of like just dancing, looking at the ceiling, feeling really uncomfortable with the fact that there's all these, like, they look like children. It was ridiculous. And then someone decided to get a round of tequila, and I thought, I got shoved a tequila shot, and I thought, all right, well, don't want to disappoint, so I necked it, and as soon as it hit the back of my throat, I was like, I'm going to bed. I'm done. I checked out. This was about 22 in the morning, and I was on the way out, and Christine was there, and I said, look, I'm going. She goes, I'll walk back to the hotel with you. And then in the morning, I heard all of the other stories, people getting into bed at 5:30, people stopping off at the kebab house with a kebab pillow at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, yep, I escaped.
That's why the viewership today is pretty low.
Yes, yeah.
Most of the people still in bed.
We can be watchable on replay. That's the problem, isn't it? Really, that's the price we pay.
Yeah.
That's it. I think yesterday morning, I was feeling a little bit tender, so we're doing the introduction and said, okay, this is a public service announcement. Who here has any paracetamol? Absolutely dying on my feet. And the chap at the front of the room was like, I've got a couple here. I was like, you're a lifesaver.
Nice.
Yeah, the 10 a.m. attendance wasn't as high as it could have been, was it? Yesterday morning. Yeah, so pretty typical. It's the old, who gets excited on the first day of the stag do or whatever. Let's face it, everyone does. Yeah. You fall into the same trap every time. Don't you know what's coming? It is what it is. It is what it is. It's got to be celebrated.
Oh my god!
Oh,
that was amazing. Absolutely gutted not to be there.
Oh, we missed you. But yeah, it was a super thing. Lots of great feedback. Some new faces, which is always brilliant. Who were like, wow, what you guys do is great. And it was nice to meet Van and Helen from Coho as well. So Van came on the Friday and Helen came yesterday. And that was good to see those guys in person, because we've spoken quite a bit about their upcoming awards and stuff, obviously. But
still time to apply.
And Van, I think he put a post up yesterday that said something like, I don't come out of a dark room very often or whatever. But yeah, he's a real tech entrepreneur, pretty archetypal. But had a really good couple of chats with him and really enjoyed the interaction. And then Helen, like completely opposite, quite effusive, likes to do things like that, and gave us some really great feedback about what we were doing. So that was lovely.
Cool.
Amazing. Is this something you guys plan more than once a year, or just once a year?
I think as a once a year sort of call it what you will conference. We've played with the format because last year, we nearly got legally stopped from doing it because of all the rules and things that were still in place. And this was a different venue, a different feel about it, a different all the rest of it. So we'll continue to engineer the format, I think. And but yeah, I think we deliberately did sort of summer before people would necessarily be going away. But we went from last year where the venue quite literally stopped us from selling tickets because they imposed their own rules over the top of the government COVID rules, which is bloody frustrating. If you guys remember who were there, to completely different kettle of fish, where it was difficult to get people to commit because people seem to want to book everything at the last minute these days. And you can understand it because we've got culture and we've all, if we all pulled together how much stuff we've booked and paid for and haven't gone to because of COVID, it would be a horrible number, wouldn't it? It would be a horrible number. So you can understand it, but then of course the train strikes happened. So we probably had like 15, 20 people who said they were coming, and probably not just said they were coming to get us off the phone or whatever, to placate us. And then couldn't train strikes, they just decided, you know what, although Solihull is obviously fantastically accessible for those who can walk home, I do appreciate the efforts that lots of other people went to. Some people even coming in from Saudi Arabia or whatever. That's just good effort to attend. I walked, that was
nice. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's shall we discuss what's in this week's Sunday supplement? It's all about.
I think it's important. I think it's important too, because and to pick up on some of the threads from yesterday as well, because Kwesi is a strategist like no other I've ever met. He has such a wonderful view of the whole of the horizon. He's just ahead of the game with what's coming up. And he was saying yesterday, I can't remember whether he said 3 or 4 years ago, ESG was one of 29 things that he was looking at. Now, between ESG and climate risk, that's almost everything he's looking at is touching on one or both of those things. And I'm continually surprised, although I'm not surprised. Don't get me wrong, I'm the weirdo, so let's get that out of the way straight away. But when electricity prices double plus, and solar panel prices only go up maybe 10%, like a lot of other things have, people are surprised to hear that the numbers on solar panels have changed quite dramatically. And I'm like, how could you not realise that they would have changed in the exact proportion that they've changed? Then I remember that I'm the weirdo. But if people have got, especially commercial buildings, but HMOs would definitely be counted in this as well, you should be looking at your PV paybacks. That's one really actionable piece of advice from a few of the conversations that I had yesterday. And the other thing is, I've been banging the drum, and I'll continually be banging the drum. Mortgage rates are on the move again next week. So we're getting a kind of double bubble situation, which always happens. You get these double and triple bubbles. So we're feeling it at the moment as a country, because our energy independence is woeful. Our strategy's been crap, really, for 40 or 50 years. And so we rely on other countries to generate power for us. We still generate 40% of our electricity by burning gas, for example. And that needs sorting out. But it's not just that. Kwesi was talking about the sensitivity of all of that to the price of the dollar versus the pound, because so much, obviously, oil denominated in dollars, so many things. People make the mistake of thinking, well, we don't necessarily import that many goods from the US, so why does the dollar-pound relationship affect us quite so significantly? But it's like, because so much of the world's trade is denominated in dollars, right? So we've got pressure on the petrol pumps, apart from anything else, which then filters through into pressure on food supply chains. And then we've got the extra bubble of, and the pound is doing really poorly against the dollar. Now, I think what's good is that the Federal Reserve are going at this breakneck pace in terms of hiking their rates and things like that. Ben Bernanke said central banking is 98% chat and 2% action. He put it a little bit more loquaciously than I just did, but that is the reality of it. And central banks should be marathon runners, they shouldn't be sprinters. And in the US at the moment, they're just sort of like, it's a bit like just going into a china shop with a baseball bat to make a point about the fact that rent is 3 days late. It's just not, it's not the way business should be done. And this is at the trillions and trillions of dollar level. And what will happen is what always happens in these situations, which is it'll cost much more money to fix it than if you hadn't cocked it up in the first place. So the benefit for us, I think, is we'll see what the US does, because it'll happen more quickly to them than it does to us. But there's a big amount of fear factor, like legitimate concern out there. You know, markets are irrational beasts, and the more that the risk factors go up, the more irrational they get. But whilst you can't see at the moment, the problem is, and not a lot of people can see the top of the mountain. You know, Kwesi calmed some of my fears by saying he thinks within 18 months the energy situation will have calmed down. Now, I was a bit more bearish than that, but he's someone I respect, incredibly highly. And he thinks that there will be a few solutions that have been put in place by then. We're both concerned about the impending winter, which sounds a bit miserable to say at the end of June when it's even sunny in Solihull today, but we're both concerned about what will happen October, November when the gas needs to go on. And there's a few potential outlying events that could really screw things up on that basis. And people have this habit of thinking, oh, well, petrol can't go any higher or oil can't go any higher. And it has actually tapered back a bit over the past week or so, although we're not seeing it yet at the petrol pumps and things like that. But there's a lot of upside risk. And what the lenders and the double bubble from the lending perspective is, I've seen a few Facebook comments this week like, oh, I can't believe the rates are 4% now. It's like, well, it's kind of your job to keep an eye on this stuff and make some moves to make sure you're not getting shafted. So one of the things I talked about yesterday was taking cover, and that's not in a let's get under the table and not do any business kind of way. That's I don't really want an exposure to the interest rate over the next couple of years. If I'm going to acquire stock, which I am, unless they put me in a box, let's face it, I'm going to need some exposure to the interest rate. But in terms of the existing portfolio, it needs to be fixed. I had
No.
Oh no!
No.
It was getting
What are you
right to
gonna
the
do?
juice then, wasn't it?
This is the most shocking event of the weekend.
He knows how to captivate an audience, and then look at that, just gone.
I feel like there should be like an EastEnders like cliffhanger, like what's next? Bless him.
Oh well, I think
what he was about to actually mention the R word.
Yeah.
R word, not.
But he dressed it up. He dressed it up as an exposure, though.
Well, I mean, with his talk yesterday, he was talking about wanting to have to fix and going in for 5 years. So he was probably moving on to if he had to refinance now with early payment charges, he thinks, he's definitely run the analysis and the cost. He knows that for parts of his portfolio where that is required, the cost offset of refinancing now with the early payment charges over the 5 years is a better position than if he didn't. And actually, without providing financial or legal advice, he had asked people in the room and watching live to look at their portfolios and see, and to run that cost analysis to see if they were to lock in now with early repayments, would it be worth on the long term with rate rises going at 1/4 or even 0.5%? Because the Bank of England have forecasted that they may get to 5.5%. I think Kwesi at one point was at 2. He was at 2.25, and Adam was somewhere in the middle at 3.5%. So that's just on base rate. But obviously the banks are going to come in above that base rate with a risk margin, one of Helen's favorite R words, and then the rate above base is going to have a fat cap on it that enables flex on their side, because with withdrawing the affordability checks for first-time buyers will have not the same effect as 100 and 110% mortgages, but with increased rates over a period of time, it can have a restriction on equity that you retain in your asset, right? So if you're the type of person where you're going, you're on a variable rate, some investors are rather than fixed, you're on a variable rate and your LTV maybe on something residential up to 80%, that there is that kind of finance out there. If there is a change in banking appetite and there is a change in market values, you can strip out 20% equity with very little effort. And that's happened quite a few times in very recent memory. So it's about being cognizant of that, the understanding that, you know, if you're debted up to the eyeballs, you don't necessarily own anything, but you're responsible for that debt. It's the equity that's your real ownership in an asset. So if you're squeezing out your equity, and market forces are stripping out that fat cap that you've built into your asset, then all of a sudden you're left in a position where the income that's coming in is just about satisfying the debt. And then the post office gets really busy sending the keys back to the banks, which is what they were doing in 2008. So it leaves some very, very interesting. Adam would have been far more eloquent and data driven than me on that point, but it was the rough gist of what they were discussing.
Sorry, like, it's a stupid question, but is posting the keys to the bank a real thing, or is it just like a metaphorical thing? Because I'm like, where would you even post the keys?
No, it was one of those things. Like, and it was a saying, isn't it? Oh, I'm just going to hand the keys back. So it was more. Okay. It was more of a metaphorical saying. I have to remember that speaking to a Polish gentleman, it's got to be this literal terms have to be applied.
I'm like, yeah, this doesn't happen in Poland. This is like a UK thing. But then in Poland, we don't have refinances. Like, you once you get a mortgage, you just have it until you sell the property. So it's just curious. Carry on.
Okay, no, I think I was at the end there. I mean, if anyone has actually read Adam's Sunday supplement, I think this one was quite compact insofar as it wasn't 3 coffees and 2 hours to go through it, but it was kind of really very punchy. He's back.
Technical difficulties, Adam. Or someone has asked. Oh yeah. Continue.
I think it was so hot in Solihull that it melted his phone.
That's or I was speaking so much bullshit that I overheated the bullshit detector. Maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah, it did. It was phone overheating. Zoom shut itself down. Yeah. Or
we've got military grade bullshit detectors here. With me on the call, it is needed.
This is why they call you the Colonel, or sometimes Hannibal, if we're feeling particularly affectionate. Yeah.
We had a game of guessing what you were trying to say.
What I was trying to say was, these things come in waves of, you know, more than one thing happens that turns the dial. So everyone watches, like next week, there's a few mortgage rates going up 0.35, which you'll notice is 10 basis points more than the interest rate rise. But also arrangement fees are going up, or this, or that, or the other. So this is part of the problem at times like this. The lenders, and I'm not decrying them, they're doing the right thing as far as the business model goes. There's more risk, so they want more reward. And therefore, pricing drifts further and further away from you. And the same goes in all sorts of sectors, but banking in general, that's a big factor at times like this. And this is why I still think the stock market will take a pretty big bath from here overall, because risk premium goes up, it forces the price down. Price of credit goes up, issuing new debt, it squashes your returns on equity. Those two things are in direct conflict with each other mathematically, and something has to give, you know. That's the bones of it.
Yeah, more or less that's what Jay described.
Who had the best guess? Who had the most amusing guess? Gold star for you, Mr. Howard.
Jay wins on all fronts.
Good man. He was listening yesterday, that means, which is a good sign. It's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. Part of my talk was don't put people on a pedestal, right? Don't treat people like they're gods and hero worship. And in the same sentence, I said, but my dream team conversation is literally Adam, Rod, Quasi, and Manish Kataria. Like, if there was a panel with those 4, like, I'd ask them questions until we all passed out, right? But that's more of a respect thing for, like, how you guys look at things in the market, how your brains work, and the decisions that you make off the back of that, right?
Yeah, and it's also, you know, you tend to flex around what I tried to be clear yesterday on, where there was a few bits where Quasi and I would potentially part company with what we think might happen. Much as it fills me with dread to disagree with the man on anything, because he is an epic mind, you know. And that's the important thing, is working around those things. And also, like, I try to say things. I try to talk about probabilities, because that's the right way to look at some of these events. But some of the stuff more recent, like the recession coming, I just see, you know, some people are saying 10% probability of a soft landing or whatever. I just can't see it being that high, that probability. You know, the US looks utterly nailed on. And again, some of it is just coming down to mathematical fact. It's a bit like what I was talking about with inflation last year. It's like, it's not really a prediction, right? A lot of the ingredients are already in the mixer. It just hasn't come out of the mixer yet. And one of the things that Kwesi and I really strongly agreed on yesterday was, you know, we've had 2 consecutive months of negative GDP growth. That's a matter of record. It's looking like June might be negative. I'm not sure about May, but obviously we can have fluctuations month to month. But, you know, you have 2 more months like that of results, and people will be saying, well, we're in a recession. And then the media looks very different. Even the banking sector, because this stuff, it doesn't move at light speed, warp speed. That's why you've got time to, when you're agile, you've got time to do things about this situation. And that's why now's always the time to take action, right? If you're going to do stuff, you've got to do stuff. But it really is not I've had a few people saying to me, oh, this is on my list. And I'm like, I tell you what, it's now at the top of your list, or bin the list. There's one thing on the list. That's the thing, because you won't be able to do this. And I'm probably speaking with more certainty and clarity than I have done on a subject since I was talking last year about the fact that inflation was going to be potentially secular and definitely rising. My big, and as I fessed up yesterday, my big mistake of last year or the beginning of this year, I'm quietly quaking and hiding from Ruth's call, actually, Helen, when we do another video for Property Sisters, because my interest rate prediction for the end of the year, I think, was 0.5 to 0.75. But
mine was too.
But being me, I hate admitting when I'm wrong, obviously. But my point is, my logic for why it should have been that is still sound.
Exactly.
This is why stuff's going to break. This is why there's going to be a recession. So, and the problem is, the timing. I still think that, I must say, and I'm the first in line to criticise any government of any colour. I'm not particularly political. I don't see the mileage in being political. It's a waste of time and energy, quite frankly. But I still think that we've done a better job than the European Central Bank and the US Fed and their respective governments and parliaments, because moving a little more slowly is still the way forward. But both Kwesi and I were of the mindset that it could easily be a 50 basis point rise at the next Bank of England meeting. So anybody who's watching this is thinking, oh, are the rate rises over yet? No, they're not over. And it'll take 6 months for some of this to filter through. So we'll be able, over those 6 months, it's still quite quick to be raising rates at every meeting, right? It's once every 6 weeks, yeah? But I'm very pleased we're not doing things like 0.75% at a time like they are in the States. Whilst you might say, you know, they've got a better economic engine and machine, they've got a bigger one, right? But their whole tax receipts struggle to cope with their 3 biggest outgoings, and the rest is all deficit funded. They're not that well structured. What I think will be really interesting, because the next meeting is early August, is we've been promised the quantitative tightening strategy release. And I think anything other than, you know what, we're actually not going to actively sell these bonds that we've got would be a bad move. I'll be really interested to see what happens. Because what you can do, just so everybody understands, is we've been quite sensible within the confines of the fact that we've used a temporary strategy for 13 years. Let's be clear about that. But in comparison to the other bigger central banks, we've been quite sensible because we bought bonds with longer durations, so they can drop off and leave less of an impact on the whole of the market. And organic wastage is the way forward. And actually, if we were going to, I was saying yesterday, one of the big, that old political cliche, never waste a good crisis, was wheeled out in 2020. And you know what? They did waste it. They did waste it because what they should have done is raised a hell of a lot of money on pandemic bonds when interest rates were 0.1 and 10-year bond yields were 0.5, right? Yeah. They could have kicked them out for 50 years or 100 years. Should have done a 100-year bond and then put them into sensible infrastructure projects for levelling up. It would have taken a crystal ball to say put them into energy. I would love to think I'd have been thinking like that at the time. Although, to be fair, I've been banging on about sustainable renewable technologies for bloody years. And I was doing solar panels in 2011 when the feed-in tariffs stacked up, and that's the biggest opportunity that we've wasted, which would have created tax revenue, would have created jobs, would have created all sorts of stuff, and would have enabled us to then say, I mean, I don't know if it's just the way my mind works, but if I was in government, I'd just be saying, right, massive opportunity for cheap debt. Oh, we secure a few $100 billion, right? Then we put the rates up, right? We fix the price. I mean, it's just how I would roll. I don't know why they didn't do that.
Well, the modus operandi, as I see it for the government, is they wasted in respect to the pandemic and the crisis. They wasted it in the respect that you put there, but what they didn't waste was the way that they kind of spin doctored everything, like, oh, look what we've done, and like you can trust us and blah blah blah. And I think they're almost building in these crisis points, and they're actively not doing anything until the 11th hour, waiting for it to kick off and then going, oh look, we fixed it, we brought in, everyone's going to get the £600 or £400 in October, whatever it is, and everyone's going to get this, and everyone got £150 off their council tax. It all came in last minute, so they can say this problem arose and we came in and we fixed it. So if you want a government that's going to fix your problems, no matter how easy it is to kind of attribute those problems to their inaction, that doesn't matter, because the spin doctorness of it. And that's one of the things.
Do you think that will work? Do you think that will work, Jay? Because I accept that. No.
No, I don't think it will work, because I don't think that what they've done is this is dribble tactic, isn't it? It's kind of like they have to kind of keep it moving to that crisis, get to that point, and then actually reveal the fix. Because they've given themselves a lot of flexibility, and I know Crazy kind of stunned the entire audience yesterday when he said they should do away with EPCs. I'm not going to ruin his point, or joining partners in property and looking in the repository to watch that whole talk yourself. But that stunned everybody, including me. I was like, yeah, that's not the answer anyone was hoping to hear, right? But when he followed up, it made sense. But a lot of things make sense insofar as I asked the question, look, could they reduce tariffs and taxes, not remove them, just to create a bit of like a soft glow up in terms of energy costs? And the reality is, the reality of what he said, which is why I think he's brilliant, is you cannot change those core values, because by changing those core values, it doesn't actually filter down any further than you'd hope. What needs to happen is you need to have the reliable energy sources and the good energy sustainability plan, which, as you have mentioned, with the hindsight that you have, that you've put into place, is like, that should have been in place 30, 40 years ago, and reviewed every 5 to 7 years hence. Do you know what I mean? So in that respect,
we talked a bit yesterday, didn't we? George Osborne's name was maligned a few times, always correctly so, I think. I mean, I didn't say it yesterday, but I did tell someone, I think it was earlier this week, he was on the radio, and I was in the car. I almost had to stop the car. I was so angry because I disliked the man intently in the first place. But one of the things that he was saying was, he was literally laughing about how he had to learn economics on the job as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I was like, mate, some of your policies were so poor that people died. I mean, that's just not funny. And not appreciating that is sociopathic, really, which, to be fair, probably go to the most top flight ministers, right? So maybe no surprise. But it's just like, how can it be the one saving grace we've got with the buffoonery of the current administration is Mr. Sunak, right? And if he gets replaced, the names that have been talked about in the reshuffle, and I'm sure Boris isn't going to replace it because he's a pretty good lieutenant. He knuckles under when it looks like, he's doing the right sorts of things, and Boris feels he's got him under control. He's always got the whip hand of, let's just have a look at your wife's bank account or whatever, when we want to suppress some of this stuff. But if we keep Boris and lose Sunak in favour is the wrong word, but in favour of Jeremy Hunt or Michael Gove, I might reconsider Portugal or Malta. I'll tell you that it would just be, that would be horrible. That would be horrible.
That would regard, for both of them. I mean, what Hunt did to the NHS is going to be felt for the next 30 to 50 years.
Gove's got one of the most toxic touches in politics, hasn't he? Whatever he touches is like, and this is where it all boils down back to George and the economics of austerity and how much damage was done by things like cutting strategic gas reserves when we just want to save money on everything. And it's that classic, when you talk about property development, and one of the one thing, when we built our house, the one thing that I absolutely fixed on throughout that whole project was getting things right at the design stage and being quite militant when it came to changing things. And that's what helped us deliver a really nice product at a reasonable price, which obviously was the goal because it was a house we were going to live in. And the same goes for government, but we have such a short-term fixation on things. We're like, right, we want to save money today, right? But what if it costs us? There's a clear correlation. I think it was stated yesterday by one of the guys on the social impact panel, perhaps Michael Patterson, maybe, or maybe it was Will. 10% increase in LHA rate, or 10%. When the gap between LHA and the private market rents increases by 10%, the need for temporary accommodation increases by 1%.
Yeah.
Now, that 1% is 55 grand a year per person in an inflationary time. And so the saving, it's not really a saving, right? It's just pushing figures around and getting political about things. And this is why, if you're in business, you don't solve one problem by papering at you. Maybe if you're in a PLC, I've never worked in a PLC, but I can imagine there's many, many, many more games played to make shareholders, pacify shareholders to an extent. But in your own business, you're not going to paper over the cracks by saying, well, I'll cut money this month that's going to cost me money over the next. But you do see it, don't you? Why do we do some of the deals that we do? Because the vendor saves 500 quid here and it costs them 20 grand on the sale price. It really can be as simple as all of that. And that's where the opportunity lies. But we shouldn't be doing that at governmental level. I'm nearly talking myself into a political run here, so I'm going to stop this sort of level of chat because it's not happening. It's not happening. I wouldn't. There's no bloody upside. That's the problem. No,
well, this is what I find amazing about politics is they will have a cabinet reshuffle, and it's a bit of a boy. Obviously, there's women in it, but it's like a bit of a boys' club. Like, what area do you want that you have absolutely no knowledge, experience, or understanding of, but it has like the most kind of gravitas as a job title. I want to be a head of education, or I want to be a head of housing, or I want to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I want to be the Home Secretary. Like they just kind of pull the title out the hat, and then that's what they do. And you have no country. Okay, they're a politician, blah blah blah. They've got advisors, but it doesn't mean they're going to do a good job. And actually, we're seeing more and more the incompetencies and the incongruencies of that kind of system. It kind of shocks me that if you're doing a political degree or an economics degree to go into politics, that when you're in politics, you don't actually specialize in an area of the country or the political environment that you can go in and go, right, now I've been a politician for 30 years and I specialize in social health care, or I specialize in the educational system, or I specialize in foreign aid and secretary and all that kind of stuff. There just isn't. It's kind of like it's musical chairs,
Well,
and that can't be
speaking-
sustainable.
There's quite a specialism in narcissism and sociopathy.
do you know what, Helen? I was just about to say, you know, when you go and other universities are available, but if you attend the University of Oxford and study philosophy, politics, and economics, you are taught that you're some kind of special being, generally speaking. And you can take that information one of two ways. You can either say, yeah, probably still need to learn stuff and be humble and be nice to people and generate genuine relationships, whatever. Or you can listen to it and say, yes, I can do absolutely anything and I can be the minister for whatever. You know, I looked at some of our peers, Helen, who are now in positions of, Matt Hancock's a great example. Matt Hancock's the same age as me. And I just look at him, I just think, he's just a fucking idiot, isn't he? You know, what is he doing? What was he ever doing? And he was in charge of the healthcare system at the most important time for the last 100 years, probably. And, you know, he's just a comparative incompetent who he could only survive in that post when he was not busy, you know, feeling up his aids or whatever else he was up to. He could only survive in that post by having that mindset of, I'm good enough to do this, when it's just not the reality. Or the reality is you need a phenomenal, I think if you look back to when Boris was the mayor of London, why did he get a lot of stuff done? Because he had a great team of people underneath him. Now, he's not the greatest at crediting those people who are, underneath Boris is maybe not the best phrase. I understand what you're saying there. There's been quite a team of people underneath him, and multiple children have resulted from that work over the years. An unknown number even to himself by his own admission. But he's not the best at crediting his team and saying, you know, well, I did this with these guys, whatever. But if you look at the revolving door of ethics ministers or special advisors or this or that or the other, he hasn't been able to maintain that team as PM for whatever reason. I mean, one of those things is, you know, you employ Dominic Cummings, you get what you deserve. Do you know what I mean? If you didn't know what that man could do after the Brexit campaign, right? It is what it is. But of course, the big dog gets to stay and the little tail gets to go, regardless of how much mud he can throw afterwards. But he hasn't got that stability. And I personally don't have that faith in the competency of the people underneath him, who are the people actually making the sensible policy decisions, so he can come in and go, oh, my hair looks good, that want to sound good on the 6 o'clock news or whatever, you know. So it's quite depressing on that front, because his team, I mean, a lot of people say, don't they, he's got people who are deliberately rubbish so that he looks good. Now, that's not the best tactic for ministers, front bench MPs running the country. You know, it's just horrific.
No, it's like Jay says, it's about, from an external perspective, it's more like CV building for them than actually finding solutions, appropriate solutions for the country and for us. Right, yeah.
It's when they retire how much they can demand for a speaking gig.
Speakers, exactly. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Can I charge 50 or can I charge 100 grand? Well, you know, if you're a foreign secretary, home secretary, and head of the education, then maybe it is 100 grand, right? But if you're just the education minister and the minister of transport, then maybe it's only 50 grand. You know what I mean? So
please enlighten me as to what sort of society has Priti Patel speak after dinner. And I can avoid lifetime. I can get an anti-lifetime membership to that very society.
I don't know. Maybe if the KKK and neo-Nazi organizations are looking for a speaker in America, she can take herself off there and suck on that poisonous blood. But I don't see many genuine organizations wanting to hear that.
Not great for the optics, Chief. Probably is what they say. Yeah. Not great for the optics. It pays to be Nick Clegg and quite watered down and palatable, but you can still get a nice 800 grand a year job at Facebook or whatever. You know, it's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, look, Nick Clegg. I mean, the beauty of Nick Clegg was he was completely inoffensive, completely inadequate, had zero spinal cord. You know, he completely sold out the students by, you know, upping the tuition and doing all that kind of stuff, which killed Lib Dem kind of power for, I think, probably the next 20 years. Maybe it's going to take them a while for that to kind of bleed out and work through. And it was one of the things that also weakened Labour. That was
not to the people of Tiverton and Honiton, Mr. Howard, who voted for the Lib Dems this week. But that's the thing. A fairly, again, I think neglected PPE actually. So they're all at it. They're all at it. These people.
Oh God.
They're all at it. But well, we'll see, won't we? It was interesting talking politics with a few of the guys who were there, because in terms of who's going to win the next election and what's going to happen, because there was quite a divergence of opinion over all of that. And I think my money at the moment would be on Labour, rightly or wrongly. Although if they did get rid of, my phone's overheating again, so I'm going to be booted. I'll stop talking.
My mind's gone off to like do a thesis on. Yeah, maybe I should do this. Do a thesis on what are the defining factors that you go into Oxford, you go through the PPE system, and you get spat out as a narcissist, or you get spat out as Adam and Helen.
So the problem that you have is you're going to try and make sense of data that is kept in a sphere which I would name the cluster of fuckery, and it's really very difficult to kind of. Oh, he's gone again. I didn't think that would do it. I thought that would keep him on.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of like it's chaos, right? And that's essentially what a cluster of fuckery is. It's absolute chaos. And then you're trying to make sense of data where there is very little context, very little clarity. You don't believe the sources of the data anyway, or how it's captured. And then you're left in this kind of miasma of what the actual fuck are we going to do? It's a gut feeling, in my humble opinion.
Oh, great stuff, Jay.
The expletive word count is up.
Yes. Poetic as always. There's a park close to where I live. It's called Parque de Poetas. And there's like also different spaces you can go and like write your poems and read your books and stuff. I think and they would kick you out very quickly. Like, this guy cannot come in this park.
Oh no, I think you should suggest that they should have an expletives corner.
Oh, maybe.
It's definitely a form of self-expression.
I will stand up for myself here. I think I've got rather dramatic prose, and I think my sentence structure is pretty fucking flawless when it gets to a certain point. But yeah, maybe the expletives are not really appreciated in certain circles.
But they are in ours, so.
Yes, and that's a blessing. Find your tribe.
Oh, amazing. Cool. Well, we hit 11 o'clock. And
you got any comments today? Or is everybody still in bed and hungover?
The comments are good morning. And there is the Honorable Hannibal Howard. It's got the ring to it. And another comment that Honorable Hannibal Howard's eloquence and expression is loved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Des. He's
and that comes from Des.
Someone that's got a really good mind and sentence structure. He's very eloquent. It's always a pleasure having a chat with Des.
He revealed his marketing skills this week. By Jove, he's put out some absolute corkers.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, landlord's gain is the marketing world's loss.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
Amazing. Dominic is asking, how was your shower, Jay?
Just so you
Everyone
know,
knows.
The event was taking place at the Voco St. John's in Solihull, and room 210 has got the most unbelievable shower. It's not really suited to my genitals, but I'm sure a female will really enjoy the use of that shower. I took a video and I sent it to Helen and a couple of other people going, if you're ever in Solihull, you're feeling a little bit lonely, this shower will really pick up your evening.
Wow.
Oh, I think that could go viral on TikTok, that joke.
When I checked out, I said to Lady, just so you know, I've sent a video of how the shower works to a couple of people. If it goes viral, I apologize in advance.
That you've just done them the best PR job. They're going to be booked full for the next year. 100%.
There'll be a waiting list just for room
for
210.
that room.
Yeah.
In fact, they'll go and find that shower head and stick it in all the rooms.
Oh,
Oh,
amazing,
dear.
amazing. Well, it was a good chat today. We lost Adam, but towards the end, I think he still covered his 80%,
Yeah.
70% of the coverage. It's going the contract. Yeah, and this week's going to be interesting as well. We've got a couple of events, going to an auction on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We've got our accountants networking event on the boat on Friday. It's going to be interesting things happening. So I'll be back next week with a dose of more gossip, more interesting stories. Yeah, so cool. Thanks for contributions, Helen, Jay, Adam, and see you everyone next week, Sunday.
Have a lovely day.
Have a great day, guys.